And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Thursday morning's flying weather graphic here showing still have some IFR due to the blowing snow conditions up along the Arctic coast, and some IFR out here over the central Bering Sea, and yet another zone of IFR, northern Cook Inlet, across Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast into the northern Panhandle, marginal VFR to the south, marginal VFR Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians, good VFR in the interior. And for the afternoon, still have the IFR up there along the Arctic coast, but for the Brooks Range southward to the Alaska Range and into the Yukon Delta there, as well as St. Lawrence Island, good VFR. Still some IFR here over the, actually some IFR, this kind of lifts up a little bit and dissipates over the southeastern Copper River Basin, leaving the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula VFR, or marginal VFR. The VFR here over central northern Cook Inlet, up into the Susitna Valley, marginal for the Panhandle, marginal VFR here for the Bering Sea. And then for Friday morning, not too bad out west, just a lot of marginal VFR, call it areas of there, from St. Lawrence Island down to Adak and Atka. Maybe some IFR here along the Alaska Peninsula. IFR also still possible there on the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, as well as the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, and that's about it. Marginal VFR for the Panhandle, VFR in the interior. And for Friday afternoon, interior Alaska staying VFR, except for the marginal VFR on the Arctic coast. Otherwise, IFR still hung up there on the east side of the Kenai Peninsula, may spread up into western Prince William Sound. And some lower conditions here along the western Alaska Range. Otherwise, the southeast coast, VFR over the northern Panhandle there with marginal VFR, central and southern areas. And some IFR lifting up to the central Aleutians with the system a little bit farther to the south. Passes Anatuvik and Adigan, another VFR day coming up for the Brooks Range. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR at times throughout the day on Thursday. Same forecast for rainy and windy, both marginal VFR, as well as Isabel and Mentasta with Tanita occasionally marginal. Portage, possible IFR in the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR through the day. And Chilkoot and White, marginal VFR. Freezing levels here, 2,000 feet over the southeast coast. Otherwise, that drops off the chart here. South of the Aleutians, mainland Alaska, at the surface, though, right near the Pribilof Islands. Tomorrow morning in across Bristol Bay and then across the Barren Islands. And icing, look for some considerable moderate rime icing here. St. Matthew Island, or actually, I'm sorry, the Pribilof Islands. And some of that trying to extend down to the eastern Aleutians into the False Pass area there toward the western Alaska Peninsula. And then some isolated moderate rime icing possible here across southern Alaska on up into the mid and upper Tanana Valley 40-mile country, actually all the way up to the Yukon River there. None to the north, to the Arctic coast, icing free there. And still some potential for light or isolated moderate icing for the Panhandle. And the jet stream, we've got 33,000 feet, kind of an upper level low there along the north coast, keeping the jet well to the southeast. Easterly flow up to 70 knots, north slope, Brooks Range of the Arctic coast, and the main jet here south of the Aleutians. 3,000 feet, still pretty windy up here across the northern part of the state, Brooks Range of the Arctic coast. East 50 to 65 knots, lighter in the central interior. Southwest 40 knots there across the eastern Alaska Range and the 40-mile country. South 40 knots for the Yukon Delta. And let's see, we've got winds north to northwest, 40 to 45 knots, central and eastern Aleutians, southwest up to 40 into the Panhandle. That drops off at 3,000 feet, a lot lighter winds at this elevation for the southeast coast and the southeast interior. A couple of bands up here to the north with those easterlies continuing 55 to 60 knots, just along and south of the Brooks Range, and then the Arctic coast, easterlies up to 55 knots. Turbulence-wise, quite an area of moderate turbulence possible over the central and northern interior to the Brooks Range. Also for the southwest part of the state, Bristol Bay, and much of the Aleutians.